Okay, we're ready to begin tonight's City of Gardena regular city council meeting for July 25th. Madam City Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Noting the presence of all council members.
Mr. City Attorney, is there anything to report from closed session?
Yes, there is one matter that the council unanimously approved a settlement of a lawsuit, SureTech Insurance Company versus City of Gardena, and the settlement of the cross-complaint of the City of Gardena against SureTech. The city will pay $88,000 in settlement of that case. However, they will get an interest in a deed of trust, and an interest in the bankruptcy action against the contractor, and we should get substantial recovery of that $88,000 the way the settlement is structured. So the council unanimously approved that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we're going to begin with our Pledge of Allegiance and invocation. Tonight's Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Lauren Alpuche and Hope Bersales. Immediately following that, if everyone can continue standing for our invocation, that'll be led by the Reverend Dwight Dudley. So please stand.
Please stand. Put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father, we just praise you. We thank you for tonight. We pray and lift up this chamber, Lord, that you will bless them with wisdom. Father, that you'll minister through them to us whom they serve. Father, we thank you for our officers who keep us safe. We thank you for the fire departments that watch over us. We thank you for this council who are leading and guiding by your name. We pray that you give them wisdom, that you help them to make decisions that will keep this city strong, healthy, a place where families will come to live, a place where families feel safe, protected, raising their children. So, Lord, we know that you have called these council members together to make that a place, the city of peace and comfort for all who come. So, Lord, bless these proceedings tonight. Give them wisdom in leading and guiding tonight. Those issues that are on the table, on the agenda, we pray that you will bless each and every one, and that as each person has come here tonight, will you give to them, Father, the answers to the questions and the help they need to continue their lives here in this wonderful city. We thank you for this council who calls for youngsters to come, open with a pledge of allegiance. We thank you for this council who invites pastors to come and pray over the proceedings. Father, we thank you, we praise you for all that you've given us, and we do ask in Jesus' name, amen. Amen.
If I can have the two pledgers, please come back to the front, Lauren and Hope. Tonight's Pledge of Allegiance was led by two participants in the summer day camp program at Arthur Johnson Memorial Park, which is sponsored by the City of Gardena Recreation Division. The first one was Lauren Alpuche, who is a student at St. Anthony of Padua School and will be in the 3rd grade. Lauren, would you like to say anything tonight? Or I'm sorry, who brought you tonight?
My mom.
Your mom, where's your mom?
Right there.
Right there. Everyone, please. Who else?
Hope's mom.
And Hope's mom, okay.
And Hope's dad and her brother Moses.
Okay. Well, thank you. Let's give them a round of applause. And Lauren, would you like to say anything else?
Yes. Thank you for inviting me tonight to let me say the Pledge of Allegiance, and one day I'd like to be mayor.
All right. Well, thank you, and I look forward to one day seeing you become the mayor in the future. Also, tonight's the Pledge of Allegiance was also led by Hope Rosales, who was 8 years old and will also be in the third grade next year at St. Anthony of Padua. And I think tonight we were already told that your mom brought you and your dad and your brother, correct? Anybody else?
And Lauren's mom.
Oh, and Lauren's mom, too. Okay. Let's again give them a round of applause. And would you like to say anything as well?
Yes. Thank you for inviting me to do the Pledge of Allegiance with Lauren. And I want to be the president one day.
All right. Okay. Well, I look forward to seeing that as well, too. So good luck to both of you guys. So again, thank you. And, we appreciate you guys doing such a great job today and leading the Pledge of Allegiance. So everyone, please give them a round of applause again. Okay, you guys can take your seat. And next up, the Reverend Dudley will please come back to the front here. Tonight's invocation was led by the Reverend Dwight Dunley, who is the Associate Pastor at Calvary Chapel, South Bay. Reverend Dudley is the Associate Pastor and has been on staff at Calvary Chapel, South Bay for the past 19 years, first serving as an intern pastor and currently working as a builder contractor for the church. A native Californian, he is a U.S. Marine Corps veteran who served in Vietnam, then attended L.A. Harbor and El Camino College, receiving training in electronics, business, law, and real estate. Of interest, Associate Pastor Dudley is the owner of Stronghold Security Company. He served as a civilian chaplain with the U.S. Marine Corps for 8 years and now ministers as a civilian chaplain with the State of California Highway Patrol. He and his wife, Robin, are the parents of 4 sons and 1 daughter. Would you like to say anything?
I just want to really just praise these youngsters for what they're doing. As a veteran who fought for this country 48 years ago in the Marine Corps, these guys, you bless my heart. You're our future, our next generation, and I love you guys. Keep doing what you're doing. That's awesome. And I have to say, this is the best part of the meeting tonight for me, is you guys. You're so awesome. I thank you. Keep up the good work, okay? You guys are really great. I love that. But thank you for inviting us and having me here today to pray and open in prayer. I love you guys. The city of Gardena, to me, is home. It's a wonderful city. We feel safe here. Our kids are safe here. You guys are doing an awesome job in taking care of us, and I thank you for that. Keep up the good work.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, next on the agenda is, we don't have any presentations tonight, but we do have, let's see, we're up to appointments here. Does any member of the council have any appointments to be made to any commissions, committees, or boards at this time?
Yes, I do.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm doing reappointments tonight, and I have Mr. Yoon for the business practices, and I have, let's see, I don't see my other one. Mr. Park. Is Ki Young Park here? That's another reappointment.
Okay, so we have 2 appointments to be made. The first one to the Gardena Rent Mediation Board is Lieutenant Representative Kai Young Park. And the second one, the Gardena Business Advisory Council, Mr. Charles Yu. So at this time, can I get a motion to approve appointing these 2 individuals?
So moved.
So moved.
Okay, Madam City Clerk, there was a motion made by Councilmember Kaskanian and seconded by Councilmember Tanaka. Will you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Kaskanian.
Yes.
Councilmember Tanaka.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Medina.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Mayor Serta.
Yes. Okay, congratulations to Mr. Yu. I don't know if the other gentleman or the other person's here right now, but I don't believe we swear either of those positions.
No, we do not. Those are commissions only to commission. I'm sorry, rent mediation we don't, and
The advisory?
the advisory council we do not.
Okay. All right, then. Well, again, congratulations, and looking forward to your work coming up here. So the
Thank
next,
you, Ms. Yu.
please come to the front again. You can come to the microphone, and that way it'll be on record here.
Turn it on first. Push the button.
Okay, thank you. Okay, what I have a question is, Commissioner, I do have a lot of young guys who is capable, intelligent, really look forward to work for the city of Gardena, but their resident is not the city of Gardena because they have a young kid. So some is moving the Torrance, but they working here, they spend more hours back here. Is there any restriction you have to have a resident address in city of Gardena?
So the requirements are to be a commissioner is that you have to live in the city of Gardena. But I believe the only committee that doesn't apply to is a rent mediation board, and that's a landlord representative. But they do have to have property within the city of Gardena. But a realtor as well? Okay. Or a realtor as well. Aside from that, you do have to live within the city. Now, a couple of the commissions do have some requirements, like the senior commission. You do have to be at least 50 years old, and I think there's one or two other requirements for those.
That regulation is fine, but the
but you do have to
residential, yeah, that's the
live
one.
here in the city of Gardena.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you. Okay, the next item here is the consent calendar. Does any member of the council have any questions or comments about the consent calendar? If not, can I get a motion to approve it as is?
So moved. Second.
Madam City Clerk, there was a motion made by Mayor Pro Tem Medina and a second by Councilmember Henderson. Will you call for the roll, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Medina,
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Tanaka,
Yes.
Councilmember Cascanian,
Yes.
and Mayor Serta.
Yes. Okay, next item, let's see, Planning and Environmental Quality Commission. That was canceled, so we're going to move on to oral communications. We have one speaker tonight. It is Cheryl Sherman.
Good evening, council members. Cheryl Sherman, Vice President of Friends of Gardena Willows Wetland Preserve. August the 13th, which is the second Sunday in August, will be our next stroll date from 1 to 4. And the topic for that day will be trees and the environment. And we will be having a docent leading a tour around the preserve, talking about the different native trees and what they have to offer for nature, and to excuse me, and to our preserve. And we also on that day, as we do on every second Sunday stroll, have a children's activity. So I want to encourage everyone that have children to be sure and bring them out, because they really do, it's not just an activity, it's a learning session. And we have topics based upon our theme for that month. And they come away really excited with new knowledge. And when they come back out the entrance gate, they're all excited to show me what they've learned. So it's a really a great opportunity for them to get a real enlightenment of nature in a different form, and have a good time with it. I also want to let everyone know that our August 19th Restoration Work Day, the third Saturday of the month, is being canceled due to the summer heat. We canceled the July one, and we're also canceling the August one. We're just concerned for safety, health reasons. Too hot out there to have people working. So pass the word along on that. We will also be open on August the 26th, the fourth Saturday of the month, from 1 to 4 for a self-guided tour if you'd like to just take a stroll in the preserve. The fourth Saturday of every month, we are also open. And this day, there is no theme. It's just the preserve is open for everyone to come and enjoy. So you can come and do artwork if you want, come and read a book, sit on a bench, relax, take photography, do whatever you want. It's your day. Remember, the preserve is federally protected, so all the people own it. So come and enjoy what you own. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is item number 8A1. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Serta, members of the City Council. What you have in front of you with agenda item 8A1 is an approval for the G-Trans Department to establish an other post-employment benefit trust with CalPERS, the California Employees Retirement Benefit Trust, which is operated by CalPERS. This is moving about $1 million of funds to this trust to deal with the other post-employment benefits that our G-Trans has acquired. Now, G-Trans operates as a enterprise fund, so they have different rules than the city in terms of funding other post-employment benefits. This item was presented at the Finance Committee to the Finance Committee members for their review, and it is a little bit technical in nature. So I'm going to break with a little bit of tradition, and I'm going to allow our Director, our Chief Financial Officer, Clint Osorio, to give you some insight so you fully understand what this does. And additionally, it is sort of an urgent issue because if we complete this in a timely manner, overall the G-Trans will save $408,000 in fiscal year 16-17. So I'll ask our Chief Financial Officer, Clint Osorio, to come up.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Mayor Serta, members of the City Council, I'm here tonight to present the pre-funding option for G-Trans Department in order to save approximately $408,000. Now, as you know, OPEB valuation and actuarial valuation is very, very complex. I actually started off with about 60-something slides, and I got it down to about 7. So bear with me. How does this work? So I want to get started with some basics just for the folks that are kind of new to this. What is OPEB and what is an irrevocable Section 115 trust? So OPEB, I put a whole bunch of jargon up there, and it's basically, in simple terms, it's an acronym for other post-employment benefits, or otherwise known as your retiree medical. So employees work for the city. Upon retirement, the city pays for retire medical up to age 65 when Medicare kicks in. An irrevocable Section 115 trust is a mechanism to set aside certain funds for, in this case, G-Trans, in order to help pay for the future retiree health care costs. The trustee, you essentially would remove, let's say in this case, it's $1 million into a trustee's account. They handle the investment of the funds, and in return, in future years, you're able to capitalize on the gains on whichever investments they may place the funds on. And I have subsequent, I guess the next page would show a table comparing G-Trans not pre-funding and G-Trans pre-funding, and I'll show you the breakdown of the savings. Currently, the G-Trans unfunded OPEB liability is at $6.2 million if G-Trans doesn't set aside any funds for this liability. If they do set aside the $1 million that we're discussing tonight to an irrevocable Section 115 trust by August 31st, we can then lower the OPEB liability and decrease it by $408,000. The city sat and evaluated two primary trustees that deal with 115 Trust. The first one is the California Employee Retiree Benefit Trust, managed by CalPERS, and the second is the Public Agency Retirement Services, or PARS. PARS and PERS is not related, they just happen to kind of sound the same. Staff eventually recommends CERP, managed by CalPERS, simply because they're a lot cheaper than PARS. CERT and CalPERS charges 10 basis points for the entire balance of your portfolio, whereas PARS charges, I think, 18 basis points. So it doesn't seem a lot in the beginning, but in aggregate later on, once this thing grows, it will be substantial. So I attempted to streamline all of the actuarial information into one table. So basically, this column, the pay-as-you-go discount rate 3.75 column, is what we are currently experiencing right now with G-Trans. The next column would be the pre-funding of $1 million by August 31st, and the discount rate will increase to 6.75. Remember, the discount rate is essentially the rate of return that's expected over the life of the investment. So the first row would be the net OPEB obligations beginning at 1617. That is just an actuarially derived number, which is $5.5 million to begin 1617. Annual OPEB cost for 1617, if you don't pre-fund it, is $1.198 million. So basically, that's an entry that is booked into their liability, in the G-Trans liability. If you do pre-fund the $1 million, that number decreases substantially in the tune of $408,000. The reason is the discount rate. You go from 3.75 to 6.75, realizing a 3% jump in interest rate, and you get to amortize it in a longer period of time. The pre-funding would re-amortize the whole thing in 30 years. The pay-as-you-go is stuck currently at 18 years and going down. The contributions during the year is $462,000 for both pre-funding and pay-as-you-go. That's the actual cash that goes out the door when we pay for the retiree, actual retiree health medical. And then you get the net OPEB obligations at the end of 1617. If you don't pre-fund, you're at $6.2 million. If you pre-fund, you're at $5.8 million, and there's your savings of $408,000. So you're also considering and approving tonight an asset allocation strategy within CERP. There's three basic strategies that they offer. The first strategy is what we recommend, actually, with an expected long-term return of 7.28%. Strategy 2 at 6.73%, and strategy 3 at 6.12%. The higher the strategy, the higher the standard deviation and deflection of your returns. Strategy 1 has an 11.7 standard deviation. Strategy 2 has 9.3 and 7.14 for the third one. Let me just go through this real quick. Again, here's the strategy. If you choose strategy 1, which is what we recommend, they've got a higher percentage on global equity, 27% on fixed income, and so on and so forth. So you see the difference is basically here on the asset allocation. Last slide would be your expected rate of return broken down to a number of years. As you can see, CERT strategy 1 is the highest yielding one. If you could just see the 1 year is at 10.62, and this is weighted over time. So our recommendation tonight, establish an irrevocable Section 115 trust with CalPERS for the G-Trans OPEB unfunded liability. Select CERT investment strategy 1 with an expected long-term rate of return of 7.28, and approve the transfer of $1 million to fund the new OPEB trust. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
And Mayor, one of the reasons we wanted to bring this before council and expand a little bit deeper, because we're talking about a lot of money, and these are rather technical decisions that need to be made. I do want to highlight the synergy that is created by our finance department and G-Trans, looking at all options to save costs. There's a lot of different things that can be considered. The fact that they identified an option that would save us $408,000 is something that should be commended. The options and the required action before you, I think, is a very good option for our city moving forward. And one thing I wanted to add is the establishment of this trust does not preclude us from using this trust to fund other OPEB liabilities if we needed to in the future. So as required now is for you to approve the agreement, concur with staff's recommendations of Strategy 1, and approve the attached delegation of authority authorizing the city manager, chief financial officer, and accounting manager to request disbursements from the OPEB trust.
Okay, thank you for that. And I also like to thank the finance director for the presentation. Very good job. Commend you and your entire staff for that presentation there. Does any member of the council have any questions? Start with Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Chief, one question. First of all, thank you for that report. In the discussion with CalPERS, are they taking G-Trans in the city of Gardena? Do they count all our unfunded liability, or because G-Trans is an enterprise fund and the rest of us are general fund, they don't count it as all one unfunded liability, or how they?
These are totally separating these out specifically for just G-Trans.
Okay. Well, what's our total unfunded liability, just roughly, you think?
That's a good question. Total number, maybe the CFO can answer that for me. Not just medical.
That's 79 million.
79, yeah. Okay, so now the next question in regards to, in discussion with CalPERS, we realize that unfunded liability is large. They're giving us the best opportunity to look at funding that whole unfunded liability, although we may never make it there as far as the rest of the public sector as well, though, correct?
Yeah, currently on the general fund side of the equation, we don't have to fund the other post-employment benefits such as G-Trans does. So the accounting process is completely different than the enterprise fund.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Tanaka.
Just a quick one. The selection of strategy number 1 on the return of 7.28, now does that stay firm at 7.28, or can that go up or down?
But just like anything with CalPERS, the rate can be adjusted. As we all know, not that long ago I presented our city budget, which reflected a different change in the discount rate by PERS. It's not set and in stone forever. It can be adjusted.
Are there any other questions or comments? Councilmember? Oh, I'm sorry. Mayor Pro Tem, go ahead with your question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On the premise of the insurance portion as far as payouts, is this a defined contribution or a defined benefit, or is it a combination of both?
Those are sort of mixing apples and oranges. That tends to deal with the formula you have for retirement. A defined contribution, a defined benefit means basically a defined contribution is how much the city will give towards a specific retirement program. Yeah, so $1,000 a month would be a defined contribution. A defined benefit has to do with the amount that you are going to receive based on a percentage format rather than a fixed dollar amount.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking, because I worked for Prudential for 7 years, 8 years. So the premise of the 462, is that going to be automatic every single year, or is that going to be a variable as well?
For the foreseeable future, it's going to be static.
Okay.
Councilmember Kaskanian.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Chief, question maybe you can answer, or Mr. Osera can answer. If we invest $1 million, we're getting $408,000 saving, right?
Yes, if we do it before August.
August 31st.
Yes.
How about if we invest $2 million? Or why don't we invest $2 million? I mean, what's the numbers, or how is that?
Well, I'm sure if I asked the transportation director to do $2 million, he wouldn't be happy about that. I just want all the council members to be reminded the money that has to be set aside for other post-employment benefits takes away from operational dollars that he can spend to expand services and improve the customer's, experience on G-Trans. So it's not just extra free money. There's decisions that have to be made to ensure that we can put as much money away, but also maintain the level of service that's required.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions at this time? If not, can I get a motion to approve this item as it is?
So moved.
Second.
Madam City Clerk, there was a motion made by Councilmember Tanaka and seconded by Councilmember Henderson. Will you call the roll?
Councilmember Tanaka.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Medina.
Yes.
Councilmember Cascadian.
Yes.
Mayor Serta.
Yes. Okay, item number 8B1, Mr. City Manager.
Mayor Serta, members of the City Council, this is a contract award for street improvements on 132nd Street from Western Avenue to Normandy Avenue. The City Council initially approved plans and specifications authorizing advertisement for bids at the May 23rd, 2017 meeting. The project will cold mill and overlay approximately 145,000 square feet of asphalt pavement, remove and replacement of approximately 1,700 square feet of concrete sidewalk, 100 linear feet of curb and gutter, construct 8 new ADA ramps. Sufficient funds were appropriated by the City Council in the 16-17 capital improvement budget using STPL funds. This also, and I'll predict Councilman Medina's question, will comply with the asphalt recycling program requirements that the city has established. The fiscal impact is about $500,000 for construction contract design, construction management, and inspection. The funding source is $500,000 from STPL funds.
Okay, are there any questions or comments at this time? Yes. Okay, Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Chief, in regards to this project, we had 5 or 6 bids that we received. What's our confidence level with the contractor that we selected in regards to that, as far as their track record and past work that they've done in relationship to projects like this?
It's a good question. When we evaluate bids, obviously the low bid is something that we want to consider, but they want to also consider their ability to perform and their past experiences in performing not only with our own city but other cities. So we do check references and their ability. We also check their ability to perform relative to their financial stability, and so that they can produce as we expect.
Okay, thank you. So with the remaining amount in the STPL funds, do we have any idea what we'll do with that, or we're just going to let that sit there? And what do you?
Generally, these agenda items go with an amount of that exceeds the actual contract price, because there are contingencies that occur, whether that be additional ramps or sidewalks or something. This is just not to exceed $500,000 as authorized by City Council.
All right. But no change orders are anticipated?
Not at this time.
Not. Are there any other questions at this time or comments?
I guess let me just clarify that one thing. The change orders that we would be, that could potentially come in with those ones that we want. So for example, because we have $500,000, if we see there's additional improvements that the city would like, those would be stipulated, but these are not to exceed prices.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, can I get a motion to approve this item?
So moved.
Second.
Madam City Clerk, there was a motion made by Mayor Pro Tem Medina and a second by Councilmember Cascadian. Will you call the roll, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Medina.
Yes.
Councilmember Cascadian.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Tanaka.
Yes.
Mayor Serta.
Yes. Next up is item number 8B2. Mr. City Manager.
Mayor Serta, members of the City Council, this is a public hearing rezoning of 15126 South Budlong Avenue from general commercial to medium residential. Essentially, this is a fix to an item that was probably mistakenly zoned. Staff found evidence that the subject property seemed to have been miszoned during the 2006 General Plan and Zoning Code update. The proper zoning for that piece of property should be consistent with the other surrounding properties. So there's two items that are being considered. Number one is a resolution number 6275 approving a general plan amendment changing from general commercial to medium residential related to the 6,400-foot it's a single property located at 15126 South Budlong Avenue. The second item would be ordinance number 1779, which is to introduce that ordinance approving the zone change number 1-17 from business and professional office to medium density multiple family residential related to that same property. So this is really a fix from the 2006 general plan amendment that we had made.
Okay, thank you. So this is a public hearing, so at this time, we're going to open the hearing. Does any member of the council have any questions or comments on this? Madam City Clerk, are there anybody who has to speak on this particular item?
No, Madam Mayor. We do not have any speaker requests.
Okay. Well, I have a quick question in regards to this here. So when reading the staff report, I noticed or it mentioned that the realtor was having a hard time trying to sell this property because of the status that it was in. So,
Mayor Serta, if you look at the map that's surrounding this property, it was clearly should not have been zoned in the fashion that it was zoned during the 2006. Zoning this would be consistent with other like properties surrounding that. What I think essentially did is that boundary went just a little too far.
okay, and I noticed in the report also it stated that at this time they weren't looking to do any type of building changes to the property. So once we approve this, how are we for sure that they're not going to,
Well, they would have to come, they'd have to go through the
back?
same process, yeah. This is not
Okay.
giving them authorization to do anything other than that they could do by right with that zone.
With the zone change. Okay, got it. And I have a question for the city attorney. Can we take up both items at the same time, or do we need to vote on this separately? Both resolutions?
I'd do it separately.
Separately? Okay. So if there are no more questions or comments at this time, can I get a motion to approve resolution number 6275?
So moved. Second.
Madam City Clerk, there was a motion made by Councilmember Tanaka and seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Medina. Will you call the roll?
Councilmember Tanaka?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Medina?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Kaskanian?
Yes.
Mayor Serta?
Yes. To just introduce the item here? Okay. Can I get a council member at this time to introduce item ordinance number 1779?
So moved.
I'm sorry, you're just going to introduce it? Okay, at this time, Mayor Pro Tem Medina is going to introduce the item. And then later on, it'll come back at the next council meeting where we'll be voting on it at that time.
Absolutely.
Okay. So next up is item number 8383. Mr. City Manager.
Mayor Serta, members of City Council, Agenda 8B3 is a public hearing, introduction of ordinance number 1778, amending the zoning provisions of the Gardena Municipal Code related to accessory dwelling units in accordance with state law. In 2017, State of California enacted laws related to accessory dwelling units. Required all municipalities, it's required to update their municipal codes as appropriate. And on June 6, 2017, the Planning and Environmental Quality Commissions reviewed and approved the proposed changes. It's recommended that the City Council adopt ordinance number 1778 with the stipulation that the city notify state legislature that parking requirements for accessory dwelling units be re-examined in the next legislative session. Obviously, with the density issues and parking issues that the City Council has faced over the subsequent years, the addition state requirement for adding additional auxiliary units is somewhat controversial, as well as may not be as appreciated. So what I would ask is I'm going to have our General Services Director, Joseph Cruz, provide the community as well as City Council an understanding of what these units are and our limitations as a City Council to do much with the state law.
Okay, and before he does that, I just quick clarification. I'm going to close the hearing from the previous item we were just on. Okay, go ahead.
Good evening, council members and Mayor Serta. This item involves amending the zoning code provisions of the Gardena Municipal Code relating to accessory dwelling units in accordance with state law. The first state laws regarding ADUs were enacted in 1982. Accessory dwelling units are more commonly referred to as in-law units or granny units, and accessory dwelling units are now the formal name adopted by the state. The most recent changes were implemented in January of 2017, requiring updates of our municipal code. The state does allow some flexibility by local municipalities in establishing local codes, but those codes must not unduly restrict the construction of ADUs. I'd like to actually read the language from the state legislation so that the understanding and the tone that was set at the state is clear for everyone. Government Code Section 65852 states, "It is the intent of the legislature that an accessory dwelling unit ordinance adopted by a local agency has the effect of providing for the creation of accessory dwelling units, and that provisions in this ordinance relating to matters including unit size, parking, fees, and other requirements are not so arbitrary, excessive, or burdensome so as to unreasonably restrict the ability of homeowners to create accessory dwelling units in zones in which they are authorized by local ordinance." Before I get to the actual changes that are being proposed, it's important also to understand some of the definitions that are being used in the language of the state law. There are three types of ADUs. Interior ADUs, which essentially take the existing footprint of a structure and partition the interior of a building. Attached ADUs that expand the footprint of an existing structure. And then detached ADUs that build apart from existing structures on the parcel. All ADUs must meet state building code. So there are a list of 11 items that are proposed to be changed. I'll walk through each one of those items. Currently, the code for minimum lot size requires a minimum 6,100 square feet. Residential lots have a minimum development size of 5,000 square feet. So to be consistent with the minimum development size for residential parcels, the code is being changed to 5,000 square feet minimum for ADUs. Currently, the square footage in the existing code is 450 to 640 square feet for ADUs. The state has identified maximums for attached ADUs at 50% of the existing structure or 1,200 square feet, whichever is less. We have adopted, or we're proposing to adopt that standard for the attached ADUs. For detached ADUs, the state says no larger than 1,200 square feet. We are being a little bit more restrictive and saying 75% of the existing structure, maximum size, or 1,200 square feet, whichever is less. The existing code identifies that utility connections and meters require separate connections and meters. The state, for interior attached ADUs, does not require separate connections, and so we're prohibited and are following their standard. For exterior attached and detached ADUs, the state is allowing for local jurisdictions to establish a standard, and we are maintaining our current standard to require separate connections and meters for exterior attached and detached. The current code requires owner-occupied units or an owner to be occupant of the main dwelling. We are maintaining that existing standard. Placement of the ADU, current standard is at the rear of the lot, not allowed above a garage without alley access. The new code will allow rear of the lot and allow for ADUs to be built on garages without alley access. For utility installations, we're maintaining the current standard of underground service. For parking, Current standard is 1 to 2 spaces per ADU. The state was very specific in this particular requirement, and they indicated no parking required for ADUs within 1/2 mile of public transit stops. In looking at the residential properties that would be impacted by the ADUs, and given the size of the city of Gardena, there are no residential units that fall within more than 1/2 mile, so therefore a parking requirement is not required for ADUs. The current code provides for enclosed stairways for units on the second floor. We have removed that requirement. Again, every unit has to comply with state building code, and as long as they meet that standard, we should not provide any restrictions on that particular requirement. The current standard for curb cuts is we currently allow only 1 per lot for ADU. We are recommending that that be controlled by the underlying zone. Residential properties currently with 100 linear feet of frontage are allowed two curb cuts. So we are essentially going with an existing standard that applies to all residential units, as opposed to those that are applying strictly for ADUs. Separation of structures on an existing parcel. The current code requires 15 feet separation between ADU and existing structure. Building standards right now allow for structures to be built within 6 feet of each other. So we are allowing for similar requirement on ADUs as we would for any other residential property. And lastly, the code does not allow for any variances for ADUs. We believe that it's reasonable to expect that there are going to be circumstances where a homeowner may want to apply for a variance, and we're leaving that decision to your planning commission. The requirements of the legislation are exempt from CEQA, and we've also publicly noticed this particular meeting. Our staff recommendation is to introduce ordinance number 1778, amending the zoning code provisions of the Gardena Municipal Code relating to accessory dwelling units in accordance with state law, and to conduct a public hearing. That concludes my presentation.
Mayor, sir, the member city council, the purpose of this presentation is, this is obviously has been a concern in our communities relative to density and parking, and I think it's important that our community understands some of the limitations that that are forced upon us by state laws. So as I know that you were looking at those charts, many of you may have had some concerns and apprehensions about what the potential outcome could be in some of the areas in Gardena. We are trying to comply with the state law and provide as much restriction as we can within the provisions of the law.
Okay, this is a public hearing, so we're going to open the hearing at this time. Does any member of the council have any questions or comments? Councilmember Tanaka.
I have a quick comment. I know we're getting hosed by the state here, and density and parking. There's no regulation as to how many people are going to be in these little dwellings. There's nothing that says how many cars are going to be put along with these dwellings. And I agree with the Planning Commission reading their report that they got an issue with this, and that the state needs to know that this is not going to work, and that they need to at least reconsider some of their issues regarding parking. I mean, it's a mess. It's going to be a total mess. So I'm just displaying my displeasure and concern over that.
Okay, Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Also would like to piggyback on that, but also I think something that we need to be aware of, because we haven't created parking districts yet, but in light of what's coming in the future, 2 football teams and all these things, Airbnb and all these different things like that, we probably may need to seriously start considering that, because you figure 16 Sundays over the fall, there's going to be all kind of folks here, and we're already a small city, and we're impacted as it is. So I recognize we want the next legislative session to jump on this, but I think we also need to start working on some local ordinances in regards to our parking districts to see what we can do to kind of get ahead of it as best we can. But I understand we want to be in accordance with state law, but 6 square miles is going to be tight with all these new dwellings and new visitors and different things like that. So it's something I think we need to start trying to get a success strategy on that. That's what I wanted to add.
Thank you. Councilmember, Mayor Pro Tem Medina.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was reading through it as he was speaking earlier, but how would that apply to, say, if you have a lot that's 8,000 square feet and you want to add on top of your house, and at the same time add another dwelling, say, to the south of you? Because I know a lot of people on Marine, particularly between Normandy and Van Ness, have a lot of issues with some of the planning commissions as far as adding on to that. How would this address that as far as ADUs are concerned? Granted, ADUs are short for granny, but there are some people that have lots there that have not been able to build on top of that. Would this open up the door for them to do that?
Well, certainly, depending on what zone that particular property falls into, the two issues are somewhat separate in that, you know, if they are allowed to by right add additional square footage and they meet all the proper setbacks and et cetera, and all the other building codes and other regulations that we have, we could not prevent them from expanding their, you know, primary residence. The auxiliary dwelling unit is really a separate, you know, issue. That's completely different than just what you're allowed to do with your current property based on the city's laws.
So on that premise, if we do accept the ADUs, you would have, if a person has a lot big enough, they could add another home to it, or another dwelling to it, or another building to it, which would cause, again, more congestion. Yeah.
Okay, Councilmember Cascania. You had a question?
Right. Yes, I do have a question. What will happen? I mean, maybe this question goes to the city attorney or Lisa Krentz, the assistant. I mean, what will happen if we don't participate or we don't comply? What's our, you know, punishment?
What happens if you don't adopt this ordinance, which is somewhat tailored to what the city wants to see, then the provisions of state law apply and you lose all discretion whatsoever. And what's in Government Code 65852.2, the city has to process. So it's not like if you don't adopt this, then you don't have to approve ADUs. You just have to approve them under the state standards instead of our own standards.
Which are much less restrictive.
Okay, I see. All right, thank you very much.
Are there any other questions at this time or comments? I have a couple of myself. So just so I can understand this better, if a person wants to, they can start sectioning off portions of their house and renting it out. Like if they want to maybe rent out the front of their house and they live in the back portion, if they just have one unit, if they make an interior modification, is that my understanding?
That is one way. They can also add additional dwelling.
Oh, let me get to that one in just a second. Okay, so also, or for instance, if they want to convert their garage over and, you know, start renting that out to a relative or their kids or something like that. For some units that have enough room in their backyards to possibly build a secondary unit. I mean, I do know, for instance, in the area that I live in, there's enough room where you can build a second house in the backyard. But maybe they only have one driveway with one garage. What happens in a situation like that?
Well, as explained and demonstrated by the chart there, as long as they meet the requirements relative to the separation of the buildings, et cetera, they would be allowed to do that.
Even though it's, because I noticed in here where it says, like, if it's a one-car garage, then, and it didn't, you know, one-car garage without a carport, then a secondary dwelling may not be permissible. I don't know. That's what I'm curious of.
Mayor and council members, one of the things the state law did this year is our ordinance used to provide you couldn't do an accessory dwelling unit unless you had a two-car garage for the main structure and provided parking for the accessory dwelling unit. That was one of the things that was specifically taken out of the city's hands.
Okay.
So if you can require replacement parking if somebody converts an existing garage, but you can't require that it be in an enclosed structure. It can be parking in the setback area. It could even be a mechanical lift if somebody wanted to put their cars up on a mechanical lift. And as it was indicated, basically we're not going to be able to provide parking because probably most everything will be within the half mile of the transit stop. But you will only be able to put only one ADU unit on your property, so it won't be that you can convert part of your house and then build a separate ADU on the back.
I see. And then I had two more questions here. So just like, for instance, if a person, I think we have some situations where people, maybe they have an additional second dwelling right now on some of their properties, and they have to get a business license because they're like they're a landlord, so they get a business license. So in this same situation, will we require them to get like a business license because they're now technically renting that other property out, whether it's to a family member, or will we be allowed to do that?
If they are renting the property out, there's a requirement that they obtain a business license. We've been very aggressive over the last several years identifying a number of properties who are being rented and did not have the proper licenses. In addition, they all have to meet the building requirements and inspections, et cetera, that are required under any structure.
Okay, and so in code enforcement, that will now be part of their job to now go out and, police these situations as well too, to make sure there are no illegal type of, dwellings being added on.
Yeah, it's a combination of our business licensing and code enforcement for compliance.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments at this time? Madam City Clerk, are there any speakers that requested to speak on this item?
No, we have no speakers.
Okay, so at this time, I'm going to close the public hearing and ask for a motion to approve this item here.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Madam City Clerk, there was a motion made by Councilmember Tanaka and seconded by Councilmember Kaskanian. Will you call for the roll, please? Oh, I'm sorry. This was introduction?
Mayor, this is only an introduction at this point.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so Councilmember Tanaka, you'll be introducing this item? Okay, so we'll be introducing this. Okay, moving on to item number 8B4. Mr. City Attorney.
Mayor Serta, members of the City Council, Agenda Item 8B4 is another public hearing, introduction of Ordinance 1776, amending Chapter 18.43 of the Gardena Municipal Code related to density bonuses and other incentives in accordance with state law. The most recent changes related to density bonus became effective January 1st, 2017. Between the time the city last updated its density bonus ordinance and the most recent legislative change, other changes were made to the Government Code Section 65915 that needed to be codified by the city. Proposed ordinance brings the city's density bonus provisions into compliance with state law. Updating the density bonus ordinance will also assist the city in implementation of its city housing element. The city intends to establish a density bonus as related concessions incentive programs that meet but not exceed the state law's minimum requirements, and that's important to note. In June 6, 2017, Planning and Environmental Quality Commission reviewed proposed changes and recommends that the City Council adopt Ordinance 1776. There may be a question of exactly who is eligible for these density bonuses, and I just take a minute to kind of explain what that is. An applicant may be considered for a density bonus if 10% of the total units of a housing development are for the transitional foster youth, disabled veterans, or homeless persons when such units are subject to a recorded affordability restriction of 55 years and are provided the same affordability level as the very low income units. Upon request of the applicant, the city may not impose a vehicular parking ratio inclusive of accessible and guest parking that exceeds the standard set below. And I won't go through all of them, but it does essentially reduce the number of required parking separate from what our normal parking restrictions would be. So what is required now is that the introduction of Ordinance 1776.
Okay, this is also a public hearing. So at this time, we're going to open the hearing. And are there any questions or comments at this time? No, Councilmember, Mayor Pro Tem Medina.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So again, this is another state mandate without going any further, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Madam City Clerk, is there any speakers from the public that would like to speak on this item?
No, we have no speakers on this item.
Okay, if not, we're going to close the public hearing at this time and ask for an introduction of this ordinance here.
I'll introduce it because we have to, not because I want to.
Okay. Madam City Clerk, Councilmember Henderson will introduce the ordinance at this time. Okay, next up is item number 8D1. Mr. City Manager.
Mayor Serta, members of the City Council, this is an award of contract to E&R Construction, Inc. For job number 927, which is the installation of a recycled irrigation water system at Arthur Johnson Memorial Park located at 1200 170th in the amount of $53,170. On April 11, 2017, Council approved the installation of a recycled irrigation water system at Arthur Johnson Memorial Park. This is in accordance with our commitment to sustainability and water use reduction in our city. The cost for this project is not to exceed about $60,000. Pre-bid project meeting was held on May 15th, 2017, and proposals were accepted through May 23rd, 2017. E&R is a state licensed contract with verified successful construction experience in the field. Golden State Water has designated them as certified to work on the Golden State Water System. They will be required to meet all bonding and financial standards. Just as a note, based on what we assume to be a consistent to maybe slightly increased water use, but it is a different water source, the return on investment on this would probably be between 10 and 12 years for the installation of this equipment. That does not include, of course, all of the costs that were absorbed by Golden State Water to provide the line. The budget fiscal impact is $60,000, and the funding source is a park in lieu fees. The council action requirement is award of the contract to E&R Construction.
Okay, does any member of the council have any questions on this item? Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Chief, just a quick question on process. So in this project, because the funding source is park and lieu fees, we established a ceiling not to exceed. But in the other project with the STPL fees, we had the total budget amount, I guess, of the fund. So I just want to understand in our process in selecting, how do we come up with the not to exceed dollar amount? Was that just, how do we get to that?
Yeah, essentially, in many of the capital improvement projects, this is usually gas tax money that is available, and it's part of our overall, CIP program. Many of the CIP programs we bid out, and as necessary, and as we observe additional changes that we would like to make within that budget structure, we do it. It's a lot cheaper when the contractor is paving an entire street and there's additional things to have them add on maybe specific changes that we want because they have all their equipment, their personnel, et cetera, there, but not to exceed that price. In this case, we're dealing on a very specific item to install the necessary plumbing to make this irrigation system work at the park.
Okay, and then the park and lieu fee fund hasn't been decimated by the $60K expenditure, correct?
No, there's definitely a significant amount of funding in that fund.
No questions.
Okay, Councilmember Kaskanian.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. City Manager, we do have quite a bit variance between the estimate amount, $76,125 versus $53,170, which is $23,000. And I know that E&R Construction is approved or they is recommended from the water company you mentioned. I mean, once you look at the estimate between both, I mean, what's the difference that they are $23,000 less than the JNA Salazar company, construction company? I mean, what kind of quality, piping they're using, or labor they're cheaper? I mean, reasonable, I would say, or?
So there's a variety of factors that go into it. We see some pretty wide swings, as you may have seen in the council approving on capital improvement plans, sometimes in excess $200,000, $300,000 more. There's a variety of factors. One, how busy is the contractor and how aggressive do they want to market? What is their experience level in doing that, and are they padding it for contingencies they may not be prepared for? But we don't lower the standards just for the price. So they would all be competing on the same level of quality, type of installation, et cetera. And then lastly, you're right, labor costs. Those vary widely based on what the potential contractors want to pay their employees.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Medina.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to say how glad I'm really happy about this coming to fruition, because it took us about 10 years to get this whole recycling water thing going through West Basin, and with the cooperation of Golden State. One of the things I wanted to mention to Councilman Henderson was that Golden State basically regulates the kind of people they'll hire, and through past experiences of the way they've done water irrigation is how they did it with, especially when they did the StubHub Center and other large facilities. They basically use 8 or 9 different contractors, and I guess that's the one they chose. But again, I'm very happy that we finally got recycled water into Gardena, and that was an effort that took 10 years.
Are there any other questions at this time? I do have a couple. Mr. City Manager, if I'm not mistaken, didn't we already spend about $60,000 a couple of months ago in regards to some new pipes and things like that for Arthur Johnson Park?
That's a question I'm not absolutely sure about.
Okay.
I do know that this is required to make the the recycled water system work with our current infrastructure there.
Right, because I saw where, we're capping some of the original ones, so now we have to have new piping through here. But I do know during the time that the construction was being done where and I understand if you don't know, but during the time when the construction was being done going down Normandy and so on, there were some fees that we had to pay as well, as far as, for this new system to come through.
I'll ask Ms. Fugio to comment on any improvements in the park related to this.
Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, the initial $60,000 that you approved in April, that was the approval of the expenditure. This is just the award of the contract, so it's the same $60,000.
I see. Okay, thank you. Thank you for the clarification. Okay, so at this time, if there are no more questions, can I get a motion to approve this item?
So moved.
Is there a second? Okay. Madam City Clerk, there was a motion made by Mayor Pro Tem Medina, and there was a second by Councilmember Tanaka. Will you call the roll, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Medina.
Yes.
Councilmember Tanaka.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Kaskanian.
Yes.
Mayor Serta.
Yes. Next up is item number 8D2. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Serta, members of the City Council. As we all know, we have our annual Jazz Festival coming up on August 27, 2017. This is an approval of entertainment contract for David Sanborn for the 2017 Jazz Festival. The festival will include entertainment, food, craft, information booths. The festival is made possible through sponsors, donations, and ticket sales, and will cover all the hard costs associated with this festival. There's no impact to the city's general fund. The budget is $30,000. The funding source is the Jazz Festival Donation Trust. So what's required is approve the contract to have David Sanborn perform at our 2017 Jazz Festival.
Does any member of the council have any questions or comments at this time? If not, can I ask for a motion to approve this item as is?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Madam City Clerk, there was a motion made by Councilmember Kaskanian and a second by Councilmember Tanaka. Will you call for the roll, please?
Councilmember Kaskanian.
Yes.
Councilmember Tanaka.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Medina.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson,
Yes.
Mayor Serta.
Yes. Next up is item number 8D3. Mr. City Manager.
Mayor Serta, members of the City Council, this is a very similar contract approval. This is a contract for the Raleigh Park August 27th Jazz Festival with Brian Culberson, another performer for the same jazz festival. There's no, once again, there's no impact to the general fund. It's $30,000, and it is paid for from the Jazz Festival Donation Trust.
Does any member of the council have any questions or comments at this time? If not, can I get a motion to approve this item as is?
So moved.
I'm sorry, where did that come from? First and your second. Madam City Clerk, there was a motion made by Councilmember Cascanian and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Medina. Will you call for the roll, please?
Councilmember Cascanian,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Medina,
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson,
Yes.
Councilmember Tanaka,
Yes.
and Mayor Serta.
Yes. Next up is item number 8E1. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Serta. Members of the City Council, this is a little bit technical as well, and I thought about having another presentation, but I think two is good to start with. This is an approval of an agreement with Evan Brooks Association for National Transit Database Passenger Mile Data Collection Services. So as a condition of receiving federal funds from the Federal Transit Administration, FTA, G-Trans is required to submit data to the FTA's National Transit Database, which is also referred to as NTB. NTB is a repository of data about financial and operating and asset conditions of American transit systems. NTD is also designed to allow for multi-year comparisons about trend analysis. G-Trans requires assistance of professional consulting services from Evan Brooks Associates to conduct an in-depth study that counts the number of passengers boarding and aligning from G-Tran buses during the July 1st, 2017 through June 30th, 2017. The purpose of this is to calculate the average length of a passenger trip. EBA specializes in transportation collection and analysis. EBA will ride and survey 45 bus routes for a month with approximately 570 round trips within that year. Work will be performed in accordance with the FTA's acceptable passenger mile sampling methods detailed in the NTD sampling manual. EBA will provide monthly reporting for the use of G-Trans to meet NTD requirements. The agreement is not to exceed $48,000 for passenger mile data collection services. The cost is funded by using local sources available G-Trans. There is no general fund impact. What's required is approve the professional services agreement with Evan Brooks Associations for National Transit Database Passenger Mile Collection Data Services.
Okay, thank you. Does any member of the council have any questions or comments at this time? Councilmember Henderson.
Chief, quick question for my own edification. In regards to EBA collecting this data, how do they just sit on the bus and do some unobtrusive observation and just select someone and watch where they go? And how do you do that without making folks feel uncomfortable?
I've actually never seen them do that, but the assumption is that they go in and ride, take notes when passengers get on, how long they travel, when they get off, and record all that data and report it back to G-Trans.
Do we have an obligation to inform the riders?
I think the process is fairly transparent, as I understand, to the riders. They should not know that this is actually occurring.
Okay, thanks.
Are there any other questions or comments? Councilmember Tanaka.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess along with that question is, who's going to be monitoring this guy to make sure he's doing his job?
Well, this firm is, highly regarded in doing this type of reporting. They're well established, and they provide high level of service. It's just like anything else. You hope and expect that you hire quality firms to do this type of research, and that they will perform as required.
I'm sure you're welcome to ride at any time and observe them as well. Are there any other questions or comments at this time? If not, can I get a motion to approve this item?
So moved.
Second.
Madam City Clerk, there was a motion made by Mayor Pro Tem Medina and a second by Councilmember Henderson. Will you call for the roll, please?
Mayor Pro Tem Medina.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Tanaka.
Yes.
Councilmember Cascanian.
Yes.
Mayor Serta.
Yes. Next up is item number 8E2, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Serta, members of the City Council. This is a memorandum of understanding between the Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transit Authority and the City of Gardena for Proposition C, the 5% transit security funds for a 5-year term, July 1, 2017 through July 30th, 2022. LA voters passed Proposition C in 1990. Proposition C established a 1.5% sales tax for public transit purposes, of which 5% must be designated to improve and expand rail and bus security. Transit security funds are allocated to include an eligible LA community municipal bus operators, including G-Trans, through the established formula allocation procedure, FAP. Funding agreement provides annual distribution of funds to G-Trans over a 5-year period. Each year, G-Trans is required to submit an invoice along with required eligible project documentation to LACMTA in order to receive the allocation. These funds are used to support its transit security program, which includes a full-time transit police officer, security training, and facility security. The fiscal impact for fiscal year 18 is they're eligible to receive $237,924 in Proposition C 5% transit security funds to be used for its security-related operating expenses. There's no impact to the general fund. What is required is the authorization to execute the MOU.
Does any member of the council have any questions or comments?
Being part of the police department a long time ago, we used to have 2 officers doing transit security, so we're down to 1.
There are 2 officers assigned to G-Trans. They work opposite sides of the shift.
Any other questions at this time? If not, can I get a motion to approve this item?
So moved.
Second.
Madam City Clerk, there was a motion made by Councilmember Tanaka and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Medina. Will you call for the roll, please?
Councilmember Tanaka.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Medina.
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson.
Yes.
Councilmember Cascanian.
Yes.
And Mayor Serta.
Yes. Next, we'll move on to council items. Councilmember Tanaka, would you mind giving your report during your closing council remarks at that time? Okay. So next we'll move over to council directives. And does any member of the council have any directives at this time? Councilmember Henderson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One question I have, Chief, since Yvonne Mallory retired, who's the city liaison for the Environmental Justice Committee? Or do we have one, or are we going to select a new one, or are we doing that anymore? Or?
That's an excellent question. It's definitely an assignment I will give to General Services Director Joseph Cruz to come back and report who's doing that for us.
Okay, thank you. And the other item I have is in regards to, because we have a lot of CIP projects coming up, if we could get a list of the periodicals where we advertise our upcoming projects, and I'm not sure if we're keeping the data in regards to the DBE enterprises, the women-owned businesses, disabled veterans, minority-owned businesses. If we can get some sort of idea of how many of those are actually, answering our RFPs, if I can get a second on that, so we can kind of answer that when that question comes our way.
I think you can just make the directive. I don't think there needs to be a
Okay,
second.
well, I just wanted to. Right.
Really speaking, if it's a council director, it's required 2.
Right. So we want to get an accordance, or excuse me, a recording of how many minority-owned businesses are responding to our contracts that we let out,
I
our
see what you're saying.
RFPs.
I'll
Because we don't
second
have
that
that
item.
data, I don't think,
I'll second that item.
in the city, yeah.
Just for clarification, there's 2 levels. You want to also know the list of periodicals and where we advertise our projects as well.
Yeah.
Understood.
Yeah. That's,
All right,
Oh.
so we can second that, or?
I just
Oh, you did
seconded.
already, okay.
Are there any other directives at this time? If not, I'd like to move on to the city manager's remarks in regards to previous directives.
Thank you, Mayor Serta, members of the City Council. In your package, you have a number of things that have been followed up since the last council meeting. One, and it's something that you may know or may not know that is in your council packages on a routine basis, and that's a development status memo from Community Development, which kind of highlights what's in progress, the status of some major developments in our community, and what has been submitted, and what's sort of on the future horizon. I think it provides a lot of information so that when your constituents ask you about a particular project, what's going on there, it's a quick reference sheet for that. Additionally, at the last council meeting, I made a report on the veteran recognition and asked for input from the city council. I will be presenting at the next council meeting a recommendation, and I'd ask that of the council members, if you have any additional comments you want to give me, to please forward them to me so that I can include them for your consideration. This will come forward to you as an action item in the future. Additionally, at the last council meeting, there was a request by Mayor Serta about a fireworks report to combine what the revenues was from the nonprofits, as well as what police activity or fire-related fire-related activity came from the 4th of July. We were going to have to postpone that until the reporting requirements, because I think they have till September 21st to report their revenues. So if it's okay with the City Council, I'd defer that until after September reporting requirement dates and report back then after that.
That'll be fine.
Okay. You also have in your package the new Live, Work, and Play, which is an exceptional publication, so please enjoy that. We recently had a Finance Committee. The entire Finance Committee agenda is in front of you for your review, and if you have any questions, please feel free. The municipal elections consolidation with the county is it's going to be a big issue for the City Council to address. The City Clerk has provided a very detailed memo in your packages for your consideration to look at. Because this is such a complex item, it is my recommendation that we set a study session for that item in September, at the September 12th council meeting, not for any action, but just for discussion and understanding of all of the different options the City Council has in front of them. After that meeting, we'll solicit input as well as take community input, and then produce an agenda item for consideration for a vote by the City Council. So it would be my request to move forward with an informal study session, informational study session that will be produced and developed by the City Clerk's office, City Manager's office, and the City Attorney's office. And then lastly, you have a report about credit card charges related to Cal cards and how that system works, and so that there's clear transparency for all the city council members and the mayor to understand how that is managed and that program is managed. And that's the end of my report.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we're going to move on to council remarks. Councilmember Tanaka, you're up first.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mine was a pretty light week. The best part about our since last meeting was I was privileged to enjoy the promotional ceremony for Sergeant and Lieutenant Brock here in council chambers. I was really proud of our police department and how they presented that, and the celebration that was put on for the two promotions. So thank you, City Manager, and thank you, Deputy Chief. That's good. I have to report on my trip to Monterey. I was fortunate enough to be able to represent us at the League of California Cities. I left the day after our council meeting, and it was the 28th full-day session, 29th full-day session. The first day we talked about, I attended 4 meetings. One was about earthquakes and how it's going to affect us in California. It was kind of an eye-opener on what's really going to happen when the big one hits. I attended the Making Housing More Affordable and the affordable housing issues. How to set goals for our city manager and the performance evaluations. That was very interesting. I'll have to remember that for our city manager. I went to Understanding the Angry Voter, and I think a lot of this had to do with the second session also, which was voter outreach and California voting rights. And I believe that's part of what we're going to be going through when we change our voting curriculum here. So full day there, and then the next day we did a couple of things about transportation, communications, and the city of Culver City actually put on a very enlightening course on successful strategic planning for councils and their cities. And they put on a really nice presentation about what they're doing in their city. So it was a full pack 2 days, very enjoyable, met a lot of great other council people and mayors. And I'm just happy that I could represent our city at the California League. So thank you, Madam Mayor. That ends my report.
Thank you. Next up is Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Since our last council meeting, I was able to attend a ribbon cutting for a new business in our community, Discount Tires. Carrot the One-on-One was there, so totally, absolutely 80s. It was great. Good time. Also, since our last meeting, I was able to attend an event, not an event, but more or less an informational session from the Supervisor Mark Ridley Thomas in regards to the Los Angeles Community Choice Energy Program. Their actual sustainability officer did a nice presentation. It was electeds from around the region. We may need to invite Gary Garrow here to discuss sustainability and community choice aggregation in regards to power options for our community, so we can at least give a heads up. A lot of local communities have already signed on. Gardena has not signed on yet. I think we need to be educated a little bit more on the possibilities of that program. I attended the LA County Office of Cannabis Management. Didn't realize there was an LA County Office of Cannabis Management, so that was new to me, but I saw it, I went. It was a listening session that they had for community members and trying to educate them on the 5 aspects of the cannabis industry and different things like that. So it's quite enlightening to hear some of the community responses to this thing that is, in front of us all. So I was just there kind of as a fly on the wall, just listening and speaking to the members of the LA County Office of Cannabis Management, trying to figure out how they got funded and whose idea that was in itself. Nobody could really give me that answer, but they're doing 18 listening sessions around LA County. So I got the schedule, so I think I'm going to go to another listening session. This one was held at Chester, Washington. There's going to be another one somewhere else. I just want to hear how the different communities actually view that actual topic. So that was interesting. And I also attended a government technology event in regards to open data or OpenGov data or opendata.gov. But anyway, it's in relationship to putting our financials on the website and still moving forward towards transparency. And I was able to actually say that I think our city, we're definitely moving in the right direction for those in the community. Our agenda's up there, our packet is up there, so you can see a lot of our data. We don't have any real-time budget information up there. A lot of cities were talking about real-time budget information. So I'm not sure if we're there yet, but it's something that we can look at. So I just was kind of listening in and being a technology person, trying to figure out, the overhead for that, the system maintenance and different things like that. So that's something that we should just kind of keep our eye on. Madam Mayor, so ends my report.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Councilmember Kaskanian.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Since our last meeting, July 13th, I attended the Police Foundation meeting, and I get some information, and they were talking about how they're helping the city and the community and the police department. I just want to say thank you to the Police Foundation for your effort and help that they provide us throughout the city. On July 19th, I attended the Finance Committee meeting. It was well presented. Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Thank you, Mr. Rosario, and the rest of the department heads. They were in the meeting. And I can say that we are in good shape. Everybody, we are in very good shape. And me too, I did attend the promotion for Lieutenant Dave Brock and Mike Sargent to promote to Sergeant. So congratulations and thank you, Chief and Deputy Tom Kang. And today I kind of met with the Warabampo mayor, just friendly, meeting, nothing official. And we just discussed, between the city, how the Warabampo doing and how can we help each other. So today I met him about an hour, and it was a very productive meeting. And that should end my report, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And for myself, since the last City Council meeting, I too attended the Finance Committee meeting. I also attended the ribbon cutting for our new environmental friendly garden that's in front of Mamie Deer Library. So if you have the opportunity, definitely go out there and take a look at it. And hopefully the garden will encourage you to possibly consider putting an environmental friendly garden like that in your own home as well. Also on that same day, I attended the pinning ceremony for, as was mentioned earlier, for the two new recently promoted officers, Sergeant Mike Sargent, as well as Lieutenant Dave Brock. And then also later that evening, I attended the CERT training graduating class as the students finished taking their series of classes and officially graduated. And I definitely want to encourage more people to please consider taking a CERT class. It definitely can make the difference in possibly you saving your own life as well as helping those around you in the event of any type of major incidents that could happen in our community. So if you're not for sure when they happen, the CERT classes, definitely check with our local fire department, and I believe periodically we have information on our website, the City of Gardena, that lets you know about the upcoming CERT classes as they happen here in the City of Gardena and in our surrounding communities. And then on this past Saturday, I attended the ice cream social event that was hosted by Mayor Pro Tem Medina, and he also performed that day and did a great job. I don't know if he knew it, but I actually did Facebook Live on him, and a lot of people liked it, and so it was pretty interesting there. He's a great singer. And on yesterday, I had a meeting with the mayor of Warabampo, Mayor Soto. He came here to City Hall and took a tour of City Hall and was very impressed with our facility here. And we had a great time just kind of sharing some ideas. And for those of you who don't know, Mayor Soto of Warabampo is part of our Sister City program. So it was a kind of unexpected visit. It wasn't during the normal time that we have our sister cities here, but the great thing about having a sister city, you can kind of show up whenever you want, and it's always going to be open door policy, so we can always meet and talk. So we had a great meeting with him as well. I do want to mention one upcoming event that I would like to definitely encourage everybody to come out to, and that's the National Night Out, which is going to be on August 1st at Target from 7 to 9 p.m. For those of you who got the Nixle notice today, it says on there August 2nd. It's actually August 1st, Tuesday, August 1st. So definitely want to make sure everybody comes out to that. It's a great event where you can come out and talk to our police officers, our firemen, Target employees, and just a great opportunity just to have a social occasion and kind of get to know each of them a little bit better. So that ends my report, and Mayor Pro Tem Medina, you're next.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Since our last council meeting, I got appointed to the Metropolitan Service Council, which is going to relate to what we were talking about earlier, especially with Mr. Crespo out there. The guys who belong to, by the way, I was appointed to that. People had to vote to see if I would be on the Service Council, and I got nominated and voted in. But what we do is we get on the bus, and we report the bus number, the badge number of the bus driver, and we kind of check out to see if everything's supposed to be the way it's supposed to be. I'm getting a checklist on all the things we should check on, because I catch the bus going downtown for SCAG meetings and also sanitation meetings and West Basin water meetings. And being on the bus, there was a lot of things that I didn't know I had to look for. And the best part is that it's free. It's, we don't get paid for that. We actually check on bus drivers and the conditions of the bus and the ridership. and there's no one there to check on us. So if I write that it's bogus and it's not, then that's on me. But that's the way the Service Council works, as opposed to the unit that we were talking about earlier, that they get paid for doing that. And I'm sure they're probably more on top of it than we are. But it's I thank the members of the Service Council for allowing me to participate with Metropolitan, and looking forward to being of service to not only our community, but the whole Los Angeles area through Metropolitan. I also attended the Ocean Friendly Garden with West Basin and Golden State Water. For those of you who don't know, it cost $40,000 for that, for both sides of the garden, that side and this side. It was about almost $40,000. And a great improvement in the visual of it. I also played at the Ice Cream Social. Didn't get a chance to get any ice cream, but I had fun anyway. I'd also like to remind you that on August the 12th, which is a Saturday, the 17-piece orchestra, the Esquires, will be playing there. And they usually draw in a big crowd, and all the ice cream you can eat from 5 to 7 p.m. I also attended the vector control meeting, which has to do with mosquitoes, for those of you who don't like vector. There's a big issue with Zika mosquitoes, and for those of you who like to really plan ahead, on October 5th, the Vector Control Mobile, which exists, kind of like the Oscar Mayer winner thing, except it's a mosquito. Wait till you see it. They'll be making a presentation to the Holly Park Homeowners Association on October 5th. So it's a Thursday night, so for those of you who want to plan really ahead, there's going to be a big presentation on mosquitoes, not only the Aedes, but also the Zikas and the West Nile virus mosquitoes. And especially now that by the time they make that presentation, summer will be over, but then you have the other conditions with stagnant water and the Zika, specifically the Zika mosquitoes attacking people. They attack animals and people, whereas the West Nile only attack the crows and sometimes some animals, but not people. So looking forward to that. Now also this coming Friday, I'll be delivering cakes, like we always do, and that is my report. Oh, wait, before I finish, I'd like to say hi to my granddaughter, Angelina. Hi. I'm done.
Councilmember Henderson?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. And speaking of cake, I wanted to say happy birthday to our mayor, Tasha Serta, and we do have cake in the back because everybody loves cake. So please make sure you partake in the cake, and I just want to wish you happy birthday. I thought you were going to say that, Councilman, but I wanted to add that.
Senior moment.
25th birthday? Yes, 18. 21. Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to adjourn. Before we adjourn our meeting tonight, we want to adjourn in remembrance of an individual, Mr. Machito Frank Fukazawa, a longtime resident of Gardena who served in the U.S. Army in World War II and part of the 442 Regiment Combat Team, Company F. Later, he was employed by the Los Angeles Unified School District for over 35 years, and he was an active member of the Gardena Valley Baptist Church, the 442 Veterans Association, and the Go for Broke Education Foundation, assisting in the development of the Go for Broke Monument in Little Tokyo. So tonight, the Gardena City Council meeting will adjourn to our next regularly scheduled City Council meeting at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, August 8th, 2017. We stand adjourned.